So here we are with continuing with Ramjoo's diary, um, and it's page 374 in part two of the book. Um, Number 20 was Sarosh K. Irani. See the biographies, and uh, Mayor Daravala will start reading for us from number 21.
Okay. Jai Baba. Admit Danda, also known as Gilly Danda, speaking uh, of it, and a smaller piece of wood pointing at both ends. Mayor Baba delivered himself as follows. This game consists in striking the small piece of wood lying on the ground on the pointed end by the longer piece held in the hand, hereby making it rise and rotate in the air. Before allowing the smaller piece of wood to fall on the ground, it should be struck again with the rod in hand, driving it as far as possible. Mayor Baba further explained, when a perfect master selects a disciple worthy of God realization, he invariably corresponds to the striking of
you
small.
missed the line.
No.
He
Okay.
invariably strikes
At the lower part of his nature, his self-egoism that corresponds to the striking of the smaller piece of wood by the rod in hand. To enable the former to lift itself in the air, the egoism of the lower self of the disciple once shattered, the second step consists in driving him onwards towards the goal of self-realization. This second ordeal is explanatory of the second stroke, which sends the piece hanging in the air to a distant proportionate to the force of the impact conveyed. Dr. Abdul Ghani, 20 years with Mayor Baba, Mayor Baba's journal, September 1940, page 682, 683. 22. Khoda K. Irani, C. ph 78. 23rd, Baba Abdullah Rahman, a Bombay saint, was often visited by Baba Jan. His disciple Tipu Baba was visited by Mayor Baba in 1915 in Bombay. Abdul Rahman's tomb was visited by Mayor Baba at the outset of the Manzil days and quite frequently afterwards by the Mandali. At Baba's direction, it appeared to play some part in the spiritual working of Mayor Baba. 24. There is a special thing about Manzil-e-Mim, meaning a Persian letter which has a circle and a tangent at T-cat to it. When Baba named the house Manzil-e-Mim, I happened to ask it meant. He said that the circle represents God and the circle with the tangent attached to it, which makes the whole thing meme, is Avtar. Avtar is the circle, and the tangent, the circle is God, and the circle with the tangent is the Avtar. At that time, of course, he did not say Avtar, but only a perfect master many years later, when he declared himself to be the avatar. He explained that Meme stands for the avatar. It is a very important letter in the Persian alphabet. From Conversations with Adi K. Irani, 1917. 25. Aga
Thank you.
Baitu. Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
welcome.
Let's go through these real quick. Aga Baidul, Rustam K. Irani, Gulmai Irani,
Irani,
mother of
Irani,
Adi and Rustam,
um,
and Mayor Baba's spiritual mother, Homi J.
Iran,
Batishkar,
Guitar,
Navroji
see the biography.
Talati, Jal S. Irani, all of them see the biographies. So, continuing, Mayor, with number 31.
Yeah, the hearing of dreams formed a very interesting feature of the Manzil life. I am sure it would not be time thrown away if I give if I give you a few significant and interesting dreams dreamt by the adherents of the master in the Manzil. One night, Mr. Gustaji Hansotia uh, dreamt that uh, he in company with Mer Baba was passing through the, through a fair of big city. Suddenly, they came across Her Holiness Baba Jan, who was seated in the frontage of the Palatil building. The dreamer worshipped Her Holiness and then went with the two perfect masters into the building. To his surprise, there he saw a big machine fixed deep into something, resembling a pit from which was shooting forth a steady live flame. It seemed to be the dreamer that the flame, if not immediately put out, would burn up the entire world. And so he promptly sought permission to the master to stop the machine from working. The permission was given, and down he jumped into the pit. But no sooner did he jump than he found himself in the waking state. A far more interesting and equally far more sorry, significant dream than uh, any of the above ones was dreamt by Bailey. Ramjoo's diary, arrogant twos. Bailey J. Irani, one afternoon in the month of October in the room on the left side of the veranda, which was allocated to him whenever he came to stay in the Manzil Bailey. In those days, used to sleep not at night, but in the daytime. Bailey, in the beginning of his dreams, found himself loitering in the desert street of a village which he could not recognize. The street contained a number of huts, but nobody seemed to him to be dwelling in them. After uh, after he crossed the street, he saw a small lane which he entered. No sooner did he go into it than he saw a number of Hindu girls close by a water pipe washing their vessels and filling them with water. One of the girls was so beautiful that all of her companions were certainly commonly comely. She totally eclipsed their beauty. She was possessed of bewitching eyes, blooming cheeks, golden hair, and fair feet. Neither in the dreamland nor in the gross world had the dreamer ever seen such a beautiful girl. At the very sight, he fell into what is stupidly called love with her and began to think out plan of enticing her into the possession by means fair or foul he resolutely resolved to have her when he was absorbed in his thought, willy thought, uh, wi- one- willy thought of reducing her. She caught sight of him, and no sooner did the eyes of both meet than he smiled, a significant smile, to which she responded with an equally significant smile. If the same feelings had entered her heart at the first sight, hope of winning her entered the dreamer's heart. But he could no longer stare at her openly in the presence of those other girls. So he entered an empty hut, and there, through a cleft with lustful eyes, he began to behold her. Seizing the first opportunity, he beckoned her to come to her, made a gesture, the meaning of
You missed this line.
no, him, she, in reply, after assuring herself that none was noticing her, made a gesture, the meaning of which was that she could come to him at the first opportunity. This gesture made the dreamer's heart dance with joy, but his joy was short-lived to his boundless astonishment when he was impatiently waiting for his sweetheart. He saw Mer Baba standing close by him. He would not have been more astonished had an African rhinoceros entered the hut. He occupied and attracted him. He was bewildered uh, to the last degree at seeing the master and was equally mortified when the master questioned him as to what he was doing. He was too much abashed to utter a word in reply. What reply can a thief give when he is caught with his booty? But the master, as soon as he caught sight of the girl looking in the direction of the hut, in the instant understood how the matter stood. He addressed not a word of reapproach to his disciple, but asking him to follow him, the left the left the hut.
Thank you, Mayor Daruvala. Shailaja,
Welcome.
Shailaja, could you unmute and continue, please?
Yeah, sure. Jai Baba.
Whoops.
No. Mhm.
Go ahead, Shay.
Yeah. The dreamer then found himself passing with Meher Baba through lane after lane. After they covered more than a mile, they stopped and entered an empty hut, which reminded the dreamer of Sri Upasni Maharaj's hut at Sakori. The master left the hut, asking Bailey to remain there till he returned to it. When Bailey was pacing up and down, he suddenly caught sight of a chart. In the corners of the chart, there were in all 4 pictures, each containing one. The upper corners contained the pictures of a Hindu temple and the Mohammedan mosque. The lower ones contained the pictures of a Christian temple and a Parsi fire temple. In the midst of the chart was the photo of Meher Baba. The dreamer simply could not help contemplating on the significance of the chart and wished from the bottom of his heart that it might bring down the barriers that separate one creed from another and might bring about universal brotherhood. When the master returned to the hut, Bailey remembers to have asked him of whose brain this chart is the product. Of your own, was the reply. Of my own? Oh no, you are making a mistake. Baba, said the dreamer. The master rejoined, this chart I ordered to be prepared in accordance with the views you had expressed to me some time ago. When it shall be put before the public, all the credit for it shall go to you, and you will be much renowned. So, saying, the master left the hut, asking Bailey to follow him. In the dreamland, Bailey then found himself ambling with the master in a street which was full of beautiful Egyptian and European ladies, and in which delightful music was being played of a certain town of Egypt. He was so much bewitched by the sights he saw and the music he heard that for a time he became oblivious of the master. Imagine his dismay and astonishment when he found that master had disappeared. While his mind was wrapped in longing for sensual pleasures, the disappearance of the master he took as a punishment for his carnal mindedness and contrition pierced his heart. Tears trickled down his cheeks, and in a tone of anguish, he shouted, Baba, oh Baba, where are you? To this, he received no reply, but when he shouted the master's name for a second time, he heard these words, Bailey, I'm here. He turned around, for he heard the voice coming from behind, but he did not see the master. Again, he heard the voice, this time as if it came from the sky. Bailey, I'm here. The dreamer still remembers to have asked in a tone of anguish, Where, Baba? Where are you? I do not see you anywhere. To this, he got the reply, which came from below the earth. Bailey, I'm everywhere. Poor Bailey was grief stricken and bewildered. Not far from him was a gutter covered with a lid. Something prompted him to go to it and remove its lid. As soon as he removed the lid, he caught sight of Jesus Christ standing in that gutter. The lower part of his body being immersed in his uh, full stinking water. Jesus, with a finger of his right hand, pointed to heaven and looked at Bailey with ineffable compassion, but uttered not a word. The dreamer was so much struck with awe at seeing the figure of us Jesus that he began to cry as if his heart would break. On seeing him weeping, a number of people gathered around him and asked him the reason of his grief. He replied that Sri Meher Baba had fallen into the gutter and requested them to take him out of it. What happened then, Bailey does not know, for his dream was over, and he found himself crying in the waking state. KJ Dastur Life of Sri Meher Baba, unpublished 9/2026. Fardoon and driver, Baba's mother, Vishnu and Derokar, Gulmai's husband and father of Rustum and Adi, Aspandiar Rustum Irani. B appears to refer to the following Gustaji, Behramji, Ramjoo, Adi, Lamson, Babu, Baidul, Pendu, Nervous, Padri, and Jal. Kutch or Kutch, former state of West India on the Arabian Sea, now part of the state of Gujarat, from Webster's New World Dictionary, 1974. Shia Muslim, a member of one of the two sects of Muslims, the Shia considered Ali, Muhammad's son-in-law and the fourth of caliphs, as the first imam and the rightful successor of Muhammad, and do not accept the Sunnah, Orthodox Muslim law, based on the teachings and practices of Muhammad as authoritative. Sunni Muslims, a member of other of the two great sections of Muslims, the Sunni approve the historical order of the first four caliphs as the rightful line of succession to Muhammad, and accept the Sunnah as the authoritative supplement to the Quran, from the Webster's New World Dictionary, 1974. The gamela is an iron pan generally used by coolies to carry heavy loads of hard substances over their heads, and since heaps of half-torn buildings and had either to be removed or repaired, and approaches prepared to the same through hills and fields, the gamela was the most prominent tool in operation. Abdul Karim Abdullah, Manzim-e-Meal, Meher Baba Journal, May 1939, page 49. Nizam, the title of former native rulers in Hyderabad, India.
Thank you, Shay.
Yeah. Thank you. Jai Baba.
Ernie, could you unmute and continue, please?
Biographies. Some members of Baba's Mandali spring forth full blown as characters in this diary without antecedents. I thought it would be of interest to include a brief contemporary description of their origins and how they were drawn to Baba. The following biographical sketches describing their lives up to the time they joined Baba are mostly taken from K.J. Dastur's Life of Sri Meher Baba, an unpublished biography of Baba's early life, written at Meherabad in 1928. While Dastur was living among the Mandali with Baba, the manuscript bears Baba's signature on the cover, indicating that it was at least read by Baba. The entries are preceded by the note number bearing that name and are arranged in the order they are noted. The entries are direct quotations from Dastur's biography, unless otherwise stated. 2. Dr. Abdul Ghani, Doctor. He was born in the same year in which the master was born, and as his house was in the same locality in which the master's house was situated, he was fortunate in coming into contact with the future perfect master from his early childhood. Both were playmates, and a deep attachment sprang up between them very early in their lives. Both passed the matriculation examination in the same year, and both joined the Deccan College. After becoming an undergraduate of arts, Dr. Ghani joined the Medical College of Pune, and from the day on which he joined it, his friends began to call him doctor, doubtless in anticipation of his becoming a physician. But he passed through the medical college without learning much, and without passing a single examination, probably because of his habit of putting off till tomorrow what he could do today. However, sometime after he left the medical college, he succeeded in securing the Calcutta degree of LHMS, and to his credit, it must be said that he is well posted up in the science of homeopathy. The narrative is continued by Dr. Ghani himself in his autobiography. It was in the year 1920 that I met Meher Baba once again, after a lapse of almost 6 years, during which period we had practically forgotten each other. I was a practicing homeopath in Bombay at the time, and used to make infrequent trips to Pune to see friends and relations. In one such visit to Pune by me, I called upon my friend Munshi Abdur Rahim, see note 4, whose residence was always associated in the minds of those who knew him with festive little parties, and where I was always certain of contacting most of my local Muslim friends and acquaintances, who invariably gathered there in the evenings to indulge in a feast of reason and the flow of soul. The usual coterie of familiar faces was there right enough, but amongst them I was pleasantly surprised to find Meher Baba, who was Mirwan to me at the time. whom I could not resist the temptation of greeting in the most informal manner, the way I used to in school and college days. Ignoring the presence of all others for the moment, I attacked Mirawan straight off with a volley of questions, personal and unconventional, as to his life and career, to which he seemed to react very good humoredly, to the surprise of those around. Although everyone present there knew me well and long enough, my fresh introduction to them by Mirawan as his college and also childhood friend made me somehow feel on the occasion that there was something criminal in my behavior that evening. My outburst of flippant familiarity with Mirawan was evidently not relished by Munshiji, as Munshi Abdur Rahim was styled by his friends. In particular, who gave vent to his pent up resentment by recalling an Indian proverb that a friend of the past is always an awkward customer, alas. This remark set me thinking furiously, and it didn't take me long to discover that the attitude of all those present towards Mirawan was of great reverence and respect. The why and wherefore of it I could not then fathom. In between me and Mirawan, we recounted that evening many of our boyhood pranks and adventures and the punitive expeditions against each other in the absence of our elders from our neighboring homes, much to the entertainment of the listeners. The party broke up that evening with a mute encouragement from Mirawan for me to see more of him, and I left with an indelible impression within me that because of my early association with Mirawan, I would be welcome to the circle of friends there always and more than ever. Matters did not end here. Oftentimes, we would repair to an Irani restaurant opposite Hazrat Babajan's seat, Shar Baldi, and over a cup of tea, Meher Baba would subtly initiate a discussion on various topics, particularly politics, by putting me a suggestive question, such as, do you like the idea of Indian leaders dragging in religion to serve political ends? The Khilafat movement had made common cause with the non-cooperation of the Indian Congress at the time, and Meher Baba would listen to my arguments for or against the question with an unassuming eagerness, as if politics was the only subject uppermost in his mind. From what I know of him today, I realize vividly that I must have bored him to death with my philosophy of politics. But he played his part to perfection, as he never allowed me to have an inkling of it for the time being. On the contrary, he made me believe that he immensely enjoyed my talks by encouraging and inviting me to meet him as often as possible. Reviewing the situation from such a long distance of time, I can confidently assert that Meher Baba was then trying to sound the recesses of my mind and heart, ascertain my likes and dislikes, and discover my fads and hobbies, if any, in my life. This line of action he invariably adopts towards people in whom he is spiritually interested, with a view to adopting the line of least resistance from them for their ultimate good. Whilst others smile condescendingly, Meher Baba accommodates and humors people knowingly, thereby affording glimpses of his deep understanding of the psychological makeup of man. Such timely gestures and concessions succeed as nothing else can in drawing the recipients, thereof, closer to Meher Baba than ever. And an alert mind here is afforded ample time to bail itself out of a particular weakness, which the master was humoring all along. To pick up the thread of my narrative, soon afterwards, when Shiji was transferred to Bombay, and when Baba heard of it, he nonchalantly said, "It is all prearranged. The venue of my working will shortly be shifted to Bombay." During the period of Meher Baba's stay at the hut, the coterie of his friends and admirers from Bombay, mostly Muslims, were enjoined to pay him a weekly visit on the express homage to Hazrat Babajan.
Whoops, you missed a line, dear.
Sorry, on the express understanding that they should first pay their respects and homage to Hazrat Babajan before coming to him or attending to some other engagements after alighting in Pune. This injunction was faithfully carried out in spirit and letter by most of those concerned. In one such visit to Pune, I delayed my visit of homage to Hazrat Babajan till late at night, and the lady saint of Charbaldri gave me a very rude shaking physically in the presence of the crowd around her, saying, "You are due in the morning and come at night." This incident, though awkwardly disconcerting at the moment, afforded me a very pleasurable insight into the perfect spiritual understanding that existed between Meher Baba and his master. And this feeling was further accentuated when the following morning I was given for the first time an unusually cold reception, altogether unlike what I was used to, by Meher Baba, who ordered the basket of fruits for him that I was carrying on my shoulders to be unceremoniously thrown into a well nearby, with a message to boot that he would not see me that day. This unavowedly was meant as a sort of warning for me in not obeying his orders, literally, with an implied lesson for others also in like circumstances. Similar demonstrations of his occult knowledge and power, which I witnessed while traveling with him to Bombay in one of his visits to Munshiji, coupled with the living memory of the tributes paid to his spiritual greatness by his masters, Hazrat Babajan and Sri Upasani Maharaj, could not but impress me very deeply. Thereafter, my attitude towards Meher Baba completely changed from levity to seriousness, and I decided to follow his advice and instructions implicitly. When one day giving me a look up in my dispensary, Sandhurst Road, Bombay, he advised me to dust and sweep the establishment with my own hands for a period of 6 months instead of the servant doing it. The reason adduced by him for the queer order was that he visualized therein a great and happy future for me, both materially and spiritually. The result has been that I did literally carry out his instructions in the matter for the given period, whereby most of my friends and the Mandali members know I did subsequently succeed in sweeping my medical establishment clean out of existence. Dr. Abdul Ghani, 20 years with Meher Baba Journal, July and August 1940, page 621 through 624, 685 through 687.
Thanks, Ern. Marvin, could you unmute and continue, please?
For Munshi Abdur Rahim Munshiji, Munshi Sahib was born at Gazipur in the district of Kashi in 1876. He was bred in poverty, but was no unfortunate as regards education. From the humble post of a timekeeper in the PWD of Pune, That's the Public Works Department, which he filled for a few years and for which he received the salary of rupees 12 per month. He has risen to the responsible post of storekeeper in the Back Bay Reclamation Scheme Department of Bombay, for which he receives rupees 250 per month. From his early boyhood days, he has been religious-minded in the true sense of the word. Sometime before Meher Baba became a conscious perfect master, Munshi Sahib came across him. He began to consider him as a saint when Marwan weaned a friend of his from his drunken habits and debauchery. His faith in the master was strengthened when on a certain day he called upon Munshiji at his house early in the morning and abruptly said to him, "What a nice remedy you took recourse to, a bath at dead of night and 2 quinine pills to remove your fever." Overnight, Munshi Sahib, though feverish, had taken bath at dead of night and then had swallowed 2 quinine pills. He was therefore thunderstruck when the master, who came to know of his peculiar remedy to remove his fever by means of his superhuman powers, reminded him of it, though he had not spoken to anybody about it. 5. Gustaji H. Hansotia. Gustaji. He was born at Hansotia in Gujarat about 38 years ago, approximately 1890. When about 7 years old, he went to Bombay, where he lived with his aunt. He was sent to Proprietary and Fort High School, where he studied till the Anglo-Vernacular 3rd standard only, as he left it on account of his dislike to study. He loved to study the biographies of saints and prophets more than the dry as dust facts of history and geography. He took far greater interest in the study of scriptures and in solving the problems of arithmetic. He has been religious-minded from his boyhood days. As a lad, he was gentle and sweet-tempered, courageous and truthful, kind to animals and loving to friends, respectful to elders and dutiful to his parents. He has throughout been a strict brahmacharin, celibate, and indeed it has not been difficult for him to keep his passions under control. He has been free from avarice. The expanse of his noble heart has seldom been troubled by the gusts of desires. The trinkets of the world have miserably failed to dazzle him. For several years after the death of his father, he took part in various kinds of business. He earned money not for himself, but for the members of his family. He always laid the fruits of his labor at their feet. In 1910, when he was staying at Deolali with his brother, who kept a toddy shop, he, as good luck would have it, came to know of Hazrat Sai Baba. As soon as possible, he repaired to Shirdi to pay his respects to this great perfect master. But to see him was to be drawn to him. Once every month, Gustaji called upon this perfect master and stayed with him on every occasion for 4 or 5 days, sometimes for a longer period. He became a sincere devotee of him, and when he came to know of His Holiness Upasni Maharaj, he became his devotee too. In 1917, he came into contact with Meher Baba. From 1918, he has been leading a life of total renunciation. Since then, he has not suffered himself to be fettered with misery-bringing bonds. Nobody who was well acquainted with Gustaji was surprised at seeing him driven to the line of spirituality. He has taken to this line as a duck takes to water. When Hazrat Sai Baba's lamp of life in this gross world was extinguished, Gustaji was close by him and had the privilege of conveying his bier to the grave. He is very proud of having done so, and equally proud of having once seen in a dream the prophet of the Parsis, Lord Zoroaster, whom he had yearned to see. He suffered much, both at the hands of Hazrat Sai Baba and Upasni Maharaj, as these perfect masters, in order to wipe out his red sanskaras, the stock of which was very large, and almost all of which he had contracted in his previous lives, used to abuse and beat him. He was not unconscious of the fact that it is 1,000,000 times better to experience the blows and buffets of a perfect master than the blows and buffets of the world. In the beginning of 1919, he went to Pune and, at the desire of Meher Baba and Upasni Maharaj, worked for some months in the toddy shop of Meher Baba. In October 1919, when Meher Baba called upon Upasni Maharaj, the latter desired him to call upon Gustaji, who was at Shirdi. Baba carried out the desire of his master. Gustaji became as much delighted as surprised at seeing him. Gustaji requested Baba not to go away without taking supper with him, but he could not see his way to accede to the request. When Baba became a perfect master, Gustaji, at the desire of his former master, Upasni Maharaj, became Sri Meher Baba's disciple and has been continuously staying with Baba since then. 6. Beli J. Irani, or Bailey. Bailey J. Irani. On the roll of the disciples of the master, the name of Mr. Bailey Jamshed Irani stands and will continue to stand high. It was with this Bailey that the master, when a boy, dared to go to the Parsi Tower of Silence on one occasion at dead of night. Bailey was born on the day of the vernal equinox in the same year in which the master was born. Unlike the master, he was unfortunately born with several bad habits, which were strengthened on account of the bad company he kept during his school life and for a few years after it. He who has now become Meher Baba was the only good and noble friend of Bailey during his boyhood. Though himself, on the whole, a bad boy, Bailey loved the noble Meher. Indeed, on occasions, he simply could not do without Meher. And so, whenever their son gave them a lot of trouble, his parents would request Meher to give him good advice and to blame him for his misbehavior. Meher was not given to giving advice, but in the case of Bailey, he would go out of his way to do so and used to do his utmost to improve his conduct. As he was aware of Bailey's affection for him, he would oft warn the naughty boy thus: "If you won't behave properly, I shan't speak with you." Unfortunately, Bailey was influenced more by his bad friends than by his only good friend. He studied only till the 4th form and then bade goodbye to school education. Soon after that, he became addicted to the nasty habits of drinking and gambling, which afterwards brought disgrace upon him and his family. When the Great War broke out in 1914, Bailey resolved to serve the British government. He was appointed to the post of storekeeper on a British hospital ship, and in this capacity, he got the opportunity of seeing various parts of the world. His experience of the world increased, and with it, unfortunately, also increased the force of bad habits. In 1917, at his own request, Bailey was transferred on land duty to Aden. In Aden, from the beginning, he led a gay life. He tumbled headlong into the booby trap of the temptations of the world. Pleasures are shallow, but the troubles that follow the pleasures are deep. His love for sensual pleasures hurried him into an era of which full advantage was taken by his enemies. He was accused of disgraceful conduct, was court-martialed, and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, which afterwards decreased by 6 months.
Thank you, Marvin. We'll continue from here next week.